Okay, it's Sunday, which means against my better judgment, it's time to go to Reddit and see what we can find in this hive of scum and villainy. So I've been to the Overwatch University subreddit ahead of time and just scraped all the questions off the first couple pages, and we're gonna talk about them now. And why is Fighters playing in the background if we're talking about Overwatch? What are you, a cop? Don't worry about it. You gotta tell me if you're a cop, right? Anyway, if you're wondering which side I'm on, just look for whichever side started with Android 21. So the first question was, what many people say Hammond is a balanced hero, but why is Hammond a balanced hero? And I've not personally heard that, but yeah, I've never really heard anybody complain about Hammond in either direction, to be honest with you. So I guess, yeah, he's pretty balanced by Overwatch standards, right? Because you either hear a lot of people complaining he's overpowered, or people complaining they're underpowered. You don't hear much on the in-between side. So, well, I mean, I guess you wouldn't, would you? Whatever, anyway. I mean, Hammond, he's pretty balanced, mostly just because he's one of the few characters in the game where he has, like, really defined weaknesses and really defined strengths at the same time. Like, he's very good at diving people. He, like, is nightmarish to play against if you're, like, Reinhardt. But at the same time, he's, like, super countered by crowd control effects, right? And Sombra. So he's like good in the situations he's good in, but he's also counterpicked by a lot of people. So he's sort of like, is one of the few heroes in the game that really actually like shows the hero switching mechanic, really, because like, Hammond's really good in some situations, really bad against some situations, so you can pick him as like a counter to other things, but then the enemy has like very clearly defined things they can switch to counter you. So there's kind of that, like, there's nothing about him that's just, like, overpowering to play against, you know? And nothing about him is either just, like, terrible. At the same time, he's very well-rounded. Which is funny, because he's a ball. That's called a joke right there. So, yeah, he's just really good at what he's good at, and he's really bad at what he's bad at, so he's just kinda balanced. How about that? Funny how it works out like that. Next up was, anyone know any good ways to play Moira? And this was mostly just looking for, like, general advice on how to play Moira, what kind of situation she's good in, what kind of team comp she works well with, what kind of team comp she works badly against, if she's better or worse than some heroes. And, like, pretty much, like, the more close-knit your team is, the better Moira is, because if your team is, like, really spread out, like, if you're playing, like, a dive comp, basically, Moira's really bad with a dive comp, because she can't really keep up with the dive comp. Like, she'll have to use Fade to keep up with members of the team, really, and, like, you really don't want to be using Fade to go in. You want to use Fade to save as an escape, so that's bad. But, like, the more far apart your teammates are, the worse Moira is, because she can't easily get from, like, one location to the other. So you got, like, your divers over here, your flankers over there, and then the rest of the backline over there. Like, Moira can't keep up with that kind of arrangement, right? That's like a situation that Ana's better in, right? But if you're playing, like, a bunker comp, then your whole team is next to each other basically the entire time, and that's when Moira, like, really shows her strength, because big healing, like, Moira puts out really big numbers healing-wise, and it's all AoE. So if you got your whole team just, like, right on top of each other the entire time, that's when Moira is gonna get the most amount of value. So, like, that's, like, the team comp thing. The closer together your team is, the better Moira is for it. The thing is that, like, other than that, Moira doesn't really have much going for her, really, to be honest with you. She's kind of like Hammond to me, another, like, pretty balanced hero, where it's just, like, she's unlikely to ever be the worst decision you can make, but she is also pretty unlikely to be the best decision at the same time, because Ana just kind of beats her in a lot of regards as far as main healers go. Unless you're looking for really big heals, or survivability, because she's got both of those things, but she kind of doesn't have too much else going for her, to be honest with you. Anyway, but, like, more along the more, like, general gameplay-wise of her, just, like, don't use Fade to go in. You don't want to ever, like, go forward with Fade unless you, like... Sometimes you do, if you can, like, seal the kill on, like, a particularly important member of the enemy team. But you need, like, a very good reason to be going forward with Fade, pretty much, because that's how you escape. And especially as you get higher in SR, people get really good at going, Moira just used Fade, let's fucking kill Moira. Because you're really vulnerable at that point in time. So don't use Fade aggressively unless you, like, super know what you're doing. You have to be very careful. Use the damage orb as much as you can while you're building up your ult, because, sort of like Fire Strike, if you don't need to be using a healing orb, and it doesn't look like you're going to need to use one in the near future, just chuck a damage orb out there at the enemy team as fast as possible. Keep the cooldown doing something, build some ult charge. Until you have your ultimate. Then at that point, you want to save the orb for more specific uses, like to try and finish people off, or just save it to use the healing orb, in a fight. Because once you've got your ultimate, just chucking it into the enemy team whenever doesn't really accomplish that much anymore. Then you're better off saving it for more specific uses. Another thing, bear in mind, you are surprisingly vulnerable while you are using your ultimate, because you can't use Fade, you can't use your orbs. So you actually... Even though you got the regen and you move a little bit faster, yeah, it's actually the point you are the most vulnerable, aside from right after you've used Fade. So, be careful what you do when you're using Coalescence. It's got a fucking long range. 30-meter range is fucking ridiculous. There are a lot of maps where you kind of just can't really get 30 meters away from people very easily. Crazy long range, so... Try not to be close to people. Try and be very careful. Similarly, try to position yourself so you're getting as many people on your team and the enemy team with the Coalescence as physically possible, because people tend to focus on it one way or the other. Like, you'll see people just using it to damage people, you'll see people just using it to heal people. You want to get both halves of the ultimate as much as possible. Ideally, you're hitting 11 people with your ultimate, right? Everybody except you, because you can't hit yourself with it. But that's not realistic, to get 11 people every single time you use it. But that's the dream we strive for, hitting 11 people with it. Try to use your orb right after you use right before you use Coalescence, rather, because... Hey, if you've got your orb off cooldown and you're using Coalescence, that cooldown's just sitting there doing nothing the entire time that you're using Coalescence. Very bad efficiency. Try and throw one of the orbs before you use Coalescence, just so the cooldown's doing something while you're using Coalescence, rather than just sitting there doing nothing the entire time. I couldn't think of anything else. Nope, the regen on the left click. Try and abuse the regen as much as possible, rather than, like, just holding down left click on people. Like, when you're in kind of the neutral poking and prodding phases... Just try and keep the regen on as many people as possible to heal chip damage up, so just like, literally just like, a couple frames spraying on them and then you're good to go. Try to use that like between fights to heal people up so that you're putting less strain on your resource, basically. Ideally, you would never have to actually like hold left click on people, but tragically, our teammates very inconsiderate and actually take damage. So, watch this though real quick. This is fucked up. That shouldn't have worked. So I was trying to use a level 3, which is an invincible startup move right there, just to kill him. And it would have worked. The thing is though, it's called a level 3 because you need 3 bars to do it. I only had 2 bars. So I just woke up and super dashed, which is fucking ridiculous. And if he was any character other than Vegito, he would have got me right there. But Vegito's crouching light is really fucked up because he does the punch. So, deserved to die? 100%. Got away with it though. Nice. So yeah, try to let the regen take care of as much as possible on Moira, and then just like hold left click over people when they're actually fighting, or you need to heal like a large chunk of their health, right? In which case, just letting the regen take care of it's gonna take like 1,000 years if it's a tank, right? But that's kind of all I got for you, like, generally, with Moira. I suppose also, like, map-wise, she isn't as good on maps that have a lot of high ground. Moira's not very good with high ground-centric maps, so like Numbani, pretty much. She just... And, like, those are the maps you're most likely to have a dive comp on as well, so it's kind of a stacking effect as well, in a way. Moira struggles a lot with high ground control, because she's got no way to easily get back and forth, and she can't really affect a fight on high ground very easily from the low ground, so... That's, I don't personally worry about that one too much, because I find it's not... You can play around it, pretty much, as long as, like, you know what the range on your left click is, or you just try and, position properly to abuse the high ground a little bit better. I find it not to be too much of an issue, but it is something that Moira can struggle with. So there you go. Next up was, why are reaction shots more accurate? And the person basically was pointing out how, like, they will miss the most easy shots in the world, but as soon as, like, they've got, like, a half second to react to something, just, like, whip their camera, like, from one side to the other, or die, they find those shots were a lot more accurate. And this is something that I've always found to be the case with myself, where I do a lot better under pressure than when I'm not pressured at all. And the reason, I would say, for that is you've just got less time to think about it, pretty much. Because I know this is my issue. The longer I've got to think about what I'm trying to do, the more likely I am to fuck it up. And I've noticed this is true with, like, every game I've ever played in my life, pretty much. If I'm playing, like, a rhythm game, I've got, like, no problem with, like, the really complicated part, but then, like, that one note by itself coming down to the end, right, last note in the song, all by its lonesome, coming down, like, alright, I'm gonna hit this note, it's gonna be fucking flawless, don't you worry about it, dude, and miss it entirely. I got too much time to psych myself out about it, so, that's probably the case, because I've found that to be true with everything else as well. This game, I've won a lot more games with one character left, almost dead, than I've ever won just, like, handedly with all three characters still alive. It's a lot easier for me when I'm under pressure. I've got less time to psych myself out about it, so that's probably why your reaction shots are better as well. Less time to think about it, less time to psych yourself out. Oh, I'm gonna click on this guy's head so good. Oh, he isn't gonna nut pick, like Looney Tunes. He walks away and there's just this perfect outline in the wall behind him. God, he was standing still as well. God damn it. Like, you know. Anyway, so there you go. That's probably why. So I know I'm that way, so... Next up was, is Soldier viable again? I think we actually had this question, like, last week as well. No, that was, is Soldier Mr. Meta again? Which he isn't, but he is definitely viable. I don't think Soldier was ever not viable. It's just that, like, there was no reason to pick him over any of the other hit-scan DPS, and I would say that is still the case, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think there's a reason to pick Soldier other than just, like, I like Soldier, pretty much. I still think the other hit-scan DPS just have got, like, more going for them overall than Soldier. I would say the thing Soldier has going for him the most is just that he's pretty resilient as far as hit-scan DPS goes, right? Like, he is one of the most survivable ones by a fairly wide margin, honestly, because he's got the sprint, so he can just, like, leave people behind if he doesn't like it. Him standing in biotic field is surprisingly difficult to kill. Like, he can just kind of stand there and brawl it out with a Winston or a D.Va like it's no big deal, right? And, like, the D.Va can kill him, but she has to be, like, really good. And the Winston, like, 9 times out of 10, you can fend the Winston off if it's just Winston by himself, honestly, because, like, he can't heal himself, right? So, you just, like, walk into the bubble, put biofield down, you can, like, fight him off. So, you know, it's kind of similar, I would say. Soldier's, like, pretty well-rounded. Like, he won't be terrible, he won't be the best either, probably. Because he's just, like, he doesn't have the hard crowd control that McCree has, which makes him good against flankers. He doesn't do the kind of burst damage that Widowmaker does, or Ashe does, or McCree even. So, like, when you know, McCree's got pretty good sustained as well, to be honest with you. Like, McCree, I still think McCree's got Soldier beat in most situations, but he's definitely viable, more so now than previously, certainly, but I don't think he was ever not viable, and he's viable now. It's just that, like, What's he got going that the others don't, other than his survivability? I suppose his ultimate, especially if you got, like, a Baptiste on your team as well. Because, God, he'll just shred people if he gets to use Tact Visor in the Amplification Matrix. Like, people will be dead before you even fully process that they're on screen yet. It's insane. But that's kind of a lot of people with the Amplification Matrix, isn't it? You know, like, it's kind of that way as an ultimate. Very difficult to use, though, similarly. So, you know, there's your trade-off, really. Yeah, so definitely viable, just kind of just a meh hero still for me. So next up was, how can I educate others to play tanks better? And this was specifically referring to the situation, we've all seen this 1,000 times, where the tank players are shit-talking the DPS players because nothing's dying, when often, a lot of the time, is not actually the DPS players, it's a fact that the DPS players are currently getting crowded on by a bunch of people because the tanks aren't making space for them. Because Reinhardt's all the way over there, he charged into the entire enemy team and he's just swinging away at them right now, trying to kill people rather than actually blocking damage. It was referring to that kind of situation, like, how do I get people to stop doing that and show them it's not necessarily the DPS, can just be you're fucking bad, right? And this is the kind of thing that's very difficult to teach people, because it's very difficult for them to recognize that they're the issue, right? Because the Reinhardt player, as far as he's concerned, he's picked a tank, he's tanking right now, right? Like, he's as far as he's concerned, everything he's doing in-game is tanking, because he's picked a tank. He's picked the tank, he's picked Reinhardt, right? How much more tank can you get, I ask you? So from his perspective, everything's tanking. And then he looks down at his medals and he sees damage, and he thinks he's got gold damage or silver damage, and he thinks to himself, well, I'm not DPS role, I'm tank role! Why DPS no do more damage than me? Unaware of the fact he's not used his shield once this entire time, right? And maybe one of the DPS is like someone that you don't expect to get the high damage medal, right? Like, you got Sombra on your team. You don't really expect her to end up with the gold damage medal all that often unless she's fucking incredible. So, but they don't see that, right? That's why the medal system's fucked up. People get fucked up ideas about things, but that's a conversation for another time. I would say the best thing you can say to the person, really, is like, you would have to present it to them in terms that they understand, right? So you would have to say to them something like, you're not making space, and they go, well, I am though, I'm playing a tank right now, and you go, yeah, but you're just trying to damage people right now. Imagine, and then this is what you would present to the person, right? You would say, imagine that you're watching a Moira on your team, and she never uses her left click. She only is just draining the enemy team. She's focusing on damage. She's not focusing on healing. And now, imagine you see that, and they go, well, of course I'm healing, though. I'm playing a healer. Would you say, oh, well, of course, yeah, you are? Or would you go, no, you're fucking not. I haven't seen you use your heal once this entire time. You'd have to present it to them like that and go, that's what I'm looking at when I see you. That's how I see you right now. I haven't seen you use your shield once this entire time. I've only seen you swinging your hammer into the enemy team. So tell me how you're making space for the team exactly. And they go, well, because they're looking at me. And then you go, well, no, obviously they're not, because our whole team's dead over here. If they were looking at you, our team would have survived, because they'd be focusing you, and you'd be dead. So no, obviously they aren't focusing on you because you're doing damage. They're just killing everybody else and then worrying about you later. And that's why our DPS aren't doing any damage right now. We're getting dove while you're diving as Reinhardt. You gotta show it to them in terms that they can visualize in their head. So you have to you'd have to draw a comparison, like, imagine a Moira that's not healing. And they go, but I'm playing a healer. You wouldn't accept that, would you? So no, why should I accept that from you? Right? Tell them, like, So the DPS are meant to do damage, right? That's what you're saying to me right now, because you're upset that you've got the gold damage medal and the DPS don't, right? So you're saying the DPS are meant to do damage. Yeah. So you're not meant to be doing damage, correct? Correct. So why are you just going in and holding left click instead of using your shield? If you're only meant to be blocking damage as a tank, you never need to use your left click at all, do you? Because you should only ever have to use your right click, because that's your role, isn't it? You know, you've got to put it in such plain terms to these people, and then they still won't accept it, right? Like, let's be honest. The Reinhardt player going in, swinging his hammer at everybody. Yeah, is this the... Did I start the same replay? I might have started the same replay again. Whatever. Who cares? Is background noise. Like, and let's be real, the Reinhardt player who doesn't understand these things is just gonna go, no, but I'm playing a tank though, so I'm still tanking. Like, that's what they're still gonna do. But that's the only argument I can really imagine in my head that might work on these people, because you've just put it in terms that they can conceptualize, because it's hard for them to see it. They only see themselves swinging at people and going, I'm a tank though, right? Obviously I tank, man. So I imagine that they've all seen a Moira who was only left-clicking, or only right-clicking, and never using their heal, so they might understand that one a little bit better. But who knows? That's all I can really say for it. Ultimately, like, they're probably fucked. They might figure it out one day, but So, next up, this was a few questions in one, but they were all along a similar line still, as you'd expect from questions that were in the same thread, right? Next up, it was, what does maining a hero mean? Do you need to main a hero to climb? And can you main more than one hero? And maining a hero just means it's the hero you play the most, really, right? Like, I main Reinhardt and Bridget. Spoiler warning for one of the later questions right there. Because those are the two heroes that I've played the most by far, are Bridget and Reinhardt. And then Moira is like pretty close after that. So those are the heroes that I main. I've just played them the most. They're the heroes I have the most confident in my ability to play. And they're the heroes I have the most, like, firm opinions of, pretty much, as well. You can see this if you go watch some of my videos. If we watch, like, a video where it's, like, a hero I don't play, like, just, like, a DPS, just, like, Junkrat, right? I've got significantly less to talk about as Junkrat than I do as, like, Moira. Because I have very firm opinions about Moira. And a lot of experience playing Moira, whereas I have fairly limited experience playing Junkrat, and I like to take from my own experience as much as possible. So that's just what maining a hero, I mean, it's just the hero you play the most, right? And, you know, main them for whatever reason you like, right? Like, you don't have to main them just because of they're good, right? You can main a hero just because you like the hero, right? It's, this game, right now, fighters, my main is Vegito, who is the man in the middle right now on my team. He is not the best hero in the game, not even by a fairly, like, there are, like, 8 characters, tier list-wise, that are above him that are just objectively better picks than him. And Android 21, there's even more better picks than her, right? Like, she is fairly, like, very middle of the rung. Vegito's a little bit above middle of the rung. But I just really like those two characters, so they're the characters that I play. I just really like Vegito, and I really like Android 21. So you don't have, like, you know, you main a hero for all kinds of reasons as well. Maybe you just really fucking like Torbjorn. Maybe you've got a thing for dwarves. More power to you. You main Torbjorn. Do whatever you want. I ain't your boss. I didn't buy the game for you. You can do whatever you want. And do you need to main a hero to climb? No, people have climbed playing Flex. I do think it's easier if you main a hero, just because, the people who flex into all kinds of roles, like, you sacrifice some of your own performance to make that, because you're just not as good at the... I definitely did just show this replay, because I remember that one happening a second ago, because it was so upsetting to me when it happened. I lost my train of thought right there. When you play as a flex player, you are not as good at all the heroes you play, because you have to play a much wider amount of heroes, right? Like, a lot more heroes to play Flex. And that means you're just not as good at any of those heroes as you would be, if you just focused on a few, right? Like, I am very good at Reinhardt, Bridget, and Moira. I'm very good at them, because they're the heroes I've made. And that's just because I've put a lot of time into them. If I played, like, 9 heroes concurrently, right, I would be very meh at most of those heroes. So, when you play as Flex, you're kind of expecting other people. It's a very supportive thing. You're giving up some of your own performance, expecting other people to play better, pretty much. So, you just do okay, you fill the hole, and you're hoping that because the other people are playing the roles they're more comfortable on, they will play better, and you'll climb kind of like that by being well-rounded. I do think it's easier to climb if you're just very excellent at a few things instead. No. There we go. Let's look for one we lost. There we go. Lest I be accused of cherry-picking. Whereas if you're just very good at a few heroes, it's a lot easier for you to make plays on those heroes. So I think it's easier to climb if you just main a few heroes. But no, you don't have to main a hero to climb. The people have climbed on Flex. I just think that is harder to do. And then, can you main more than one hero? I've already given that one away, that I think, yes, you can, because I've already said that I think I main 3 heroes. So, yes, I do think you can main more than one hero. I think you probably start to cap out somewhere around 3, because I think at that point you're starting to stretch yourself pretty thin across all those heroes. It could be that you mained, like, one hero for a very extended period of time, and then switched to another one, and, like, just because you switched like that doesn't mean you lost your experience on the other heroes that you had, right? So you might have mained someone for, like, 5 months or something, switched to another one and never played that first one again, but, like, that skill that you built up on the other one kind of doesn't go away, so you could probably still consider that, like, maining the hero in a way, assuming you did at one point. But I do think once you get to, like, 3 characters, that's when you're starting to stretch yourself a little bit thinner, and you probably stop maining heroes at that point. You start being just more Flex. So, there you go. That's all those ones done. Next up was, as a healer in lower elos, is it better to keep the best player alive or the worst? And this is a very straightforward answer. If you're playing a healer, especially in lower elos, mostly in lower elos, because this becomes less of an issue. That was pretty rad right there, to be honest. Even though I got fucked for it. It was pretty rad still. You find the best player. You identify the best player on your team. You find the one you think is most likely to carry that game. And you pocket the fuck out of that player. You go to yourself, that man, if anybody wins us this game, it's gonna be that man. And you just try to make it as easy as possible for that guy to win you the game. So you pocket the fuck out of the best player. The worst player, let's be honest, the worst player in lower SRs, he is fucking worthless, dog. You can just, like, fully write that guy off, because they're gonna be doing dumb shit, right? Because as soon as I hear, like, low SR worst player, I start imagining... I imagine a couple different things, but the thing I imagine most clearly is, like, a Doomfist that just, like, flings himself behind the enemy team, misses all his cooldowns, and then just gets beat to death by the enemy team. And, like, you can't keep that guy alive, right? Like, that guy is fucked up so bad, he's just definitely dead. And even if you do keep him alive, what do you gain from keeping that guy alive? You gain... a meat shield, I guess? That's all you could consider him, right? If he's, like, of that degree, which he probably is in lower SRs, right? Even in higher SRs, to be honest. You know. So, like, keep the best player alive. Find the one you think's the best player, the one you think will carry the game, and you make it as easy as possible for that person to carry the game. There you go. So, very, very simple question. Next up was, what helps you climb the most? Solo, duo, trio, or 6-stack? So, personally, I find just solo queue to be the easiest way, and I think that's just because I have a lot simpler of a time focusing on the game if it's just me playing by myself, right? Because as soon as I start playing with more people, I kind of start taking the game a little bit less seriously, right? I'm more inclined to just kind of, like, be hanging out with my friend. So, I take it a little bit less seriously at that point. So, for me, personally, solo queue, just because I can focus on what I'm doing more, pretty much. Yeah, for me personally. I think for most people, though, you would find most results playing duo, just because it, like, assuming that the person you're duoing with, you can expect a certain degree of skill from, right? Because you've just lowered the chances of your team being bad, pretty much, by introducing the second person, assuming you can rely on them. Because that's how the math works out with team-based games, is if you play well consistently, there are just less people on your team that can play badly, right? Because if you're playing well, that means there's only 5 people on your team that can be playing badly, right? But the enemy team's got 6 people who can be playing badly. So if you introduce a duo partner who you also expect to play well consistently, there are now only 4 people on your team who can do badly, whereas there are 6 people in the enemy team that can do badly, right? So you just increase your odds. And you might say to yourself, well, shouldn't theoretically doing trio be even better then? Because now you've introduced another person you can rely on. I think at that point it starts to get a little bit skewed, because at that point, the games, you start requiring more teamwork to get things done, really. Because now, the way the matchmaking goes, it's gonna look for more people in a squad on the enemy team as well. So if you got a trio, there's more likely to be a trio over there. If you're in a 4-stack, there's more likely to be a 4-stack over there. And at that point, you start needing to coordinate with your teammates more to actually start winning, because they might be coordinating as well. And teamwork is just the most insidious force in the world, isn't it? So I think once you start introducing more than 2 people into it, it can start to skew a bit the other way, just because suddenly the skills you need to do well change a little bit, and you start needing more teamwork. So I think for most people, duo is going to be the best. Reduce your odds a little bit better of getting bad people on your team. Always good, but you don't have a high enough stack that you start needing to use coordination. Disgusting. So that's what I think it will be for most people. And then 6 stacks, extreme opposite end of the spectrum, right? That means there's probably a 6 stack on the enemy team. At this point, we have to expect they are going to use teamwork. And that means we need to use teamwork, because you can't really beat teamwork as one person. Terrible, I know, absolutely awful. So that's and you know, maybe that's what you're in for, right? Like, maybe you really like the teamwork aspect of the game. You personally want to be like the shot caller type figure, then that's where, you know, 6 stacks are great for you. But for most people, I think we're talking duo is the best you can do. And so now the last question I have is, anyone have any advice about how to not let SR make you feel like a failure as a human? So, you know, ooh, very existential for the last question, isn't it? So, it's never really been an issue for me, because I've never really, like, etched my soul onto the stats I have, really. It's never been that much of an issue for me to get over this. The mentality I adopt mostly is just, I'm not playing to win, I'm playing to improve. And you might say, well, what are you doing playing if you're not playing to win? And I would tell you that playing to improve and playing to win are basically the same thing. It's just how you approach the situation that's different, right? Because if you're playing to win, you get a lot more anxious, right? Because suddenly losing becomes a failure state. I mean, that's weird to say, isn't it? Losing becomes a failure state, right? You're stressed about losing. Oh god, my number's gonna go down if I lose. I gotta win, I gotta win, I gotta win. And it creates a lot more anxiety about the situation. When you lose, which you invariably will, then you feel really bad about it because you're playing to win. If you're playing to improve, losing suddenly isn't actually a failure state anymore, because you actually usually learn more from losing than you do from winning. So suddenly, losing, if you would change your mentality ever so slightly, losing is actually not bad anymore, because you're still learning from the game. You just didn't win, which is not the end of the world. If you're not trying to win, you're trying to improve. So that's kind of like the mentality I adopt with this kind of thing, and I find that has helped me a lot, because I'm just much more laid back about these things. I don't really tilt. It's very hard for me to tilt. I don't really get particularly salty about games. I might go like, oh, of course, but I'm not like genuinely salty about anything that happened, really. Because I'm not particularly bothered if I lose. It's like, whatever, to me. And like, you know, so, like, fighters happening in the background, right? I've now played about 5,000 games of fighters, right? But this is the first fighting game I've ever actually played to any significant degree, right? I had a go at a few previously, but like I sat down and I went, this is the fighting game I will learn to play. So there was a point in time, my win-loss ratio, no lie, looked like 1,000 games played, 271. And that's very depressing to look at, isn't it? So that's like, you win like less than 30% of the games you play. That's depressing as fuck, isn't it? But now, it's sitting at, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but now it's sitting at about 5,500 games, and it's a slightly over 50% win ratio. It's something like a 53% win ratio now. And so I've gotten there in the end. And, you know, it's very upsetting, right, to look and see, oh god, we'll lose fucking, like, 70% of the games I play? Holy shit, that's awful. But it never really bothered me that much, because that's kind of what I expected, right? I said to myself, my ratio is gonna be fucking terrible. It's really hard to learn a fighting game from zero. You should expect to lose most of the games you play. And that's what I expected. I'm like, whatever. Doesn't matter, just a number. I'm trying to learn how to play the game. And I learned how to play the game, but it took a fucking long time. Most people just kind of bounce off this kind of thing, right? Because they look at that number and, well, they wouldn't even get to that, right? You'd get to a lower number than that and be like, oh god, this is fucking terrible, right? You get to like 100 games won and you see you've only won like 20, you'd go like, Jesus Christ, this is terrible, and you just bounce off it at that point. Because losing feels bad. But that's not the mentality I approached it with, because I'm like, I'm trying to learn how to play the game. I'm not really trying to win. Winning's the end point, but like, I'm just trying to improve. So I'm way less stressed about it. And like, that's the mentality I try and adopt about this kind of thing. And like, you know, that's the best advice I can really give you. Try not to worry about the winning. Try and focus on like the incremental improvement instead, right? And then, you know, it takes a long time. It's very hard to recognize it as it's happening. But eventually you step back and you go, holy shit, I'm so much better than I used to be. Jesus Christ. Because, the ranking system in this game is kind of fucked up. Because it's, like, all Dragon Ball Z terms. But, like, there was a point in time where I was looking, I was like, I couldn't get out of, like, Super Saiyan 2. Or something like that. Which was the rank. It was something like, it's something like 200, it's not that. It's like 400,000 battle points or something like that. And now I'm at Living Legend, so I've gone through from Super Saiyan to, because that was the point I like really started to get stuck in terms of climbing. So I went from that, Demon, Majin, 3, God. I've gone through like 7 ranks since that point, right? So at one point I stepped back and went, holy fuck, I'm at Living Legend? That's really fucking high. And I went and looked over at, like, the scoreboard, and it was like, I was in the top 100 on the scoreboard for, like, BP and, like, the PC server. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, I've gotten so far, right? Like, and that was the point it all paid off for me. I wasn't bothered about the winning. I was bothered about the improving. And eventually I stepped back and went, holy shit. I did improve. And that felt fantastic. So that's like the advice I would give, to try and focus on that. Obviously, it's not that simple, right? Like, you can't just go to yourself, alright, mindset change. Winning, not important anymore. It's not that simple. That's the mindset I try and adopt. And I just started another game in the background, so now I feel obligated to talk more, but I've kind of run out of things to say about that question, to be honest with you, because that's the only real advice I've got to try and, like, not let SR make you feel like a failure as a human. You know, I could start saying some real hippie shit, like, hey, when you start feeling tilted, hey, go take a walk. Right? Like, hey, go cool off for a little bit, watch a movie, read a book, dude. Live your life, right? But, like, come on. That never helped me, to be honest with you. There was a point in time I got, like, really angry about video games. Like, when I was younger, I've mellowed out a lot more as I've gotten older. So I remember, like, the game I played was League of Legends for a while as well. Like, if you're doing badly in a game of League of Legends, you are in that game for, like, possibly an hour, feeling bad, pretty much, so it breeds a lot of salt in you as far as MOBAs go. If you're losing in, like, a fighting game, you know, it's like, I'm gonna get beat on for, like, 2 minutes, and then it's over. Now I can try and play somebody else, probably still get beat on, but, you know, thank goodness this game looks like it's going to be really short, so I don't have to fill as much space. Isn't that incredible? If you are looking to get into a fighting game, I would recommend playing Fighters. It's very, easy to get into by fighting game standards. You can just kind of, like, do a lot of shit, kind of get away with it. There's, like, a universal combo structure, which makes things easy. There's not a lot of, like, input. There's not a lot of, like, directional inputs. Like, you don't have to do any, like the Street Fighter inputs. You don't really have to do any of that. Most you have to do is a quarter circle back or a sort of quarter circle forward. Very easy motions to do. And, you know, it's just, like, I find it, the presentation helps a lot, I think, with this particular game, where the game just kind of looks good to me, right? Like, it's got a fantastic art style. That helps, but, like, combos just look cool. Even the really basic ones still, like, look pretty cool. You don't have to do complicated combos either. I got to Living Legend. I can't do any of the fucking complicated combos. If I try to, I fuck them up, like, 10 times out of 10. So, hey, how about that? Turns out all you really need to know how to do to play a fighting game is block and punish people for doing stupid shit. I can do those things, no problem. Took a while, though. Things get very overwhelming when you're in the corner and, like, Cell and Gohan are staring at you and you've got to block for the next, like, minute and a half. That's an exaggeration, but it feels like it's, like, 10 years when you're in there. Anyway, there you go. Whatever. All questions done. Video games cancelled now. So thank you very much for watching. If you did, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us. Started streaming on Twitch Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 7 PM EST till 10 or 11 EST, usually 11. There's a link to the description there's a link to the channel in the description below. And if you managed to make it all the way through the video and somehow still enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middling quality in the future. And I hope you found the video helpful.